Good afternoon. I think the man on my left-hand side doesn't need any presentation, but let me start exactly there. Eddie Jones, head coach of the England National Rugby Union team. How much of those words say about the real you?
Well, I love coaching, and I've got the honour to be able to coach England at the moment. England hasn't had a good time recently, so it's a great time to be coaching England.
Now, we were gonna get into that later on, so perhaps leave it for that. But the Eddie Jones player, would you have called him up?
Too small, mate.
But he's supposed to be the best of competitors.
Yeah, but now the game's just changed so much, and I think that's a fascinating thing of sport. You know, the body changes, but the game doesn't change, and you've got to find the right athletes to play the game now. It's like tennis, you know. 20 years ago, tennis, you had guys 5'8". I remember being out of Wimbledon seeing Rod Laver, you know, a little guy. Now, those guys don't play. They're all 6'4". They use big rackets. It's all about power, and rugby's the same. Rugby's evolving into a power repeat sport. You know, it used to be a skillful sport, but it's a power repeat sport. So you've got to find athletes that can repeat power and then have a little bit of skill.
Was it fair or unfair that as an Australian you weren't international?
Definitely fair. He's a very good coach, Bob Dwyer.
But is there something that Eddie Jones, the player, you brought into your coaching?
Well, I think, you know, when you stop playing, the next best thing is to coach. And I was lucky enough, I was coached by I think one of the best coaches who's ever coached rugby, in Bob Dwyer, and I learned a lot from him. And I think the experience of failure also teaches you to be a bit more hungry. So, you know, I see players who've probably been very good players. I don't see that hunger in them when they coach, because they've touched the heights. And, you know, when you're involved in sport, when you start playing sport from an early age, you know, you want to be the best. And if you haven't been able to do it as a player, then the next option is to do it as a coach.
So that is a source of motivation, the fact that, I mean, you used the word failure. It wasn't a failure, your career, but that you weren't at the top. Was that a source of motivation then as a coach?
Definitely, and I want to coach the perfect game. You know, no one's ever coached the perfect game. So imagine playing a game of rugby where from the first minute to the 80th minute you're in control, completely in control.
What's the result of the perfect game?
Well, it can be 3-0. The scoreline's irrelevant, but just having control of the game.
So that's the obsession for many of top elite coaches. It's to control what happens on the pitch, which is really, if you think about it, completely uncontrollable. So it's an impossible fight. Do you think of it that way?
Well, I think it's always going to be impossible to coach the perfect game, but I think striving to do it's the fun part, and, you know, getting players to play with that intensity and that purpose is the fun part of it.
So how much time you spend in thinking, say, the tactics? How much is the psychology of dealing with your people?
Well, I think more and more the game's about the psychology, because young people have changed so much over the last period of time. I was just on the weekend, I was lucky enough to be at the Red Bull Learning Centre, and they had this guy came in, a sports psychologist. He was a sports psychologist for the Chicago Cubs. And he was just saying, in America, what's been lost over the last 20 years is the innate competitive desire of players. You know, they don't innately compete anymore. All they want to be is famous. You know, and you look at players in England or Japan or Australia, you see the same sort of thing. It's probably not as pronounced. So the ability to get that desire out of the players becomes so much more important in coaching. You know, the tactical side is here nor there. You know, you can win a game sometimes on tactics. Very rarely, you know, it's not a massive factor. It's important.
I've been lucky enough to spend a whole year following Pochettino, Mauricio Pochettino, the Spurs manager, very closely, and that's the big battle, to try to bring that passion from the players. His trick, in a way, is to try to say, why did you become players in the first place? What happened to that kid that wanted to play football? Because I don't see it here. What's your trick? How are you trying to get that passion from them?
Well, I think everyone wants to be part of something special. Yeah, I think everyone, again, deep down, there's a devil in everyone, and that devil wants to be part of something special in life, and it's trying to find a purpose for them to have that extra desire, that extra motivation to be uncomfortable. Yeah, because again, most people want to be comfortable, don't they? You know, they like to do what they like to do, and getting people regularly to do what they don't want to do is the most important thing.
You have gone out of your comfort zone, because after a player you could have been a teacher and stay there. You've gone out of your comfort zone. Is that how you saw it originally, becoming a coach and trying to coach at the elite, which is not like coaching?
Definitely. I remember I'd been lucky enough to become an acting principal at the age of 32, and they put in a permanent principal. I went to the chairman and I said, look, I've got a choice here. I can either coach or stay in education. He said, go and coach. So he obviously didn't think I was a very good principal, so it wasn't much of a choice for me.
Okay, that coach, that Eddie Jones that starts coaching, how different is he to you now?
A lot different, because age changes you, and I think, again, the players have changed considerably. From 10 years ago to the players now, you've got to treat them differently. They've got different motivations, they've got different values, and it's neither right nor wrong. So the way you coach them now, you can't just tell them what to do. You've got to guide them to discover what to do, and that's the fun part of coaching. That if you don't evolve, you don't keep coaching.
Part of your evolution, I suppose, it was to get it wrong and then try again or go a different direction. What do you do with those mistakes? Is that something that's in your head? You've written them down? What are they?
Well, when you fail, it hurts you badly, and I think when you're young, the hard thing is reflecting on those failures. You don't accept responsibilities for those failures, and as you get a bit older, you tend to accept the responsibility, and once you accept the responsibility, it becomes a very important learning path for you. One of the mistakes I made in the last job, which wasn't successful at the Reds, we won 2 games out of 13. The thing I take from that is that I started following trends in the game rather than trying to set the trend in the game, and you've got to have the courage to try to set the trend in the game rather than follow it, because whenever you follow something, it's too late, because it's already been done. You can never be as good as it's been done before. But because I probably lost a bit of confidence, I took that job after I had the Australian job, and I lost a bit of confidence. I thought I'll do what everyone else does, and it was shit.
So is there something in your culture, the one that you learn at home with your family, that allows you to see failure as a something to help you instead of an obstacle?
Well, Australia's a sporting background, a sporting culture. You're playing sport, it almost defines you in Australia. If you're successful at sport, you're seen as being successful. So, sport, there's always winning and losing. There's always winning or losing. So you're exposed to that from an early age, and you're always driven to win because you want to be successful.
I'm asking that because it seems like, I don't know how you find the English mentality, fear is a massive factor here, where, as a football player at 16, you get told if you are good or bad as a player, or if you can be a professional or not, at 16, when you still haven't developed. So a lot of people approach that with fear, and fear stops people going out of that comfort zone. You found that with the English mentality, perhaps?
I think you should be coaching. I think that's a great explanation. No, I think definitely England, there's definitely a fear of failure, definitely a fear of not doing what everyone's doing. Players like to get comfortable. They like to have a nice house. They like to drive a Range Rover. They like to do the same thing every day at training. And so to get them to have the courage to try to be different is the biggest trick. Encourage them to do that consistently, to be different. Don't be comfortable, be uncomfortable.
So I guess when you have to come into the England national team, you have to make stamps of your authority and show that that's what you have to do. You have to come out of your comfort zone. So choosing the captain, perhaps behind that election, it was a bit of that.
Yeah, well, I remember when we named Dylan Hartley as captain, the RFU got a stack of letters about this big. And one of the prominent public schools threatened to pull out of rugby because they thought, how can you put this lunatic in charge of the national team? And he's a lunatic, but he's a nice lunatic. And nice lunatics are good to run teams because he's got that earthiness about him. You know, he's a boy from Rotorua, was up to no good in Rotorua. And if you've been to Rotorua, there's not much to do there, so you got to find ways to be naughty. And then he left and came to England, battled his way at Worcester Academy, went through Saints Academy and became a national team player. So he knows the value of struggle. He knows the value of how hard he's had to work. And because he leads like that, it sets a great example for the rest of the team. And now there's at least 4 or 5 players that mimic his behaviour. And now we're starting to get a tipping point in the team where if you don't come to the England side and you don't give 100%, you don't give it all, then you're not going to be part of the team. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
Did you have the intuition that that's what English players need, that this is the culture here, a leader, whatever shape or form?
Oh, well, there's probably 2 things. One, I think, you know, because I've coached in a number of different countries, I think one of the things you try to do when you come to a country is understand how society operates and historically what's worked and what hasn't worked. Yeah, and you're guessing a little bit, but for instance, in Japan, I got someone to do a thesis on the samurai culture for me because I wanted to understand what was the basis of how Japan ran their society. And, you know, 3 things came out: trust, hard work and discipline. So we made that the values of the team. And certainly the young people in Japan don't resonate with samurais, but those values are taught by their parents to them. So making that part of the team was quite easy. And when I came to England, you know, I was struck by the fact, you know, as an Australian, and we're not the most polite or the most contrite people in the world, how polite English people were. You know, they're very polite. People in England like to get on. They like to get on with it. And maybe it's because it's a small island, you know you're going to meet that person again. And the other thing was, watching the World Cup in 2015, just felt they just needed someone up the front leading the way, playing with a bit of aggression. And if there was a person like that, then more people will follow. And certainly Martin Johnson was a great example of that. You know, I don't think Martin Johnson used to give great speeches, but what he used to do is lead by example. And then people came with him. And Dylan's a bit the same. He's not the greatest player in the world, but he leads by example. People come with him.
So you touched on something that perhaps helped you when you became England national coach, which was that you're foreign, so you see things differently. And it comes from, can we say, failure. Yeah. Those things certainly easy the path?
Definitely, I think so. Yeah, and I've been lucky with England. I've come at the right time because they've had failure, so people are more desirous to be successful now. The hard part for us is now, because we've just gone 2 years of being successful, and now players, you know, you read the paper, every player's getting a 5-year contract. You know, they've all got deals with whatever sponsor there is. You know, it's our ability now to make them want to work harder again, because the incentive for them is not there, because they're now even more successful. So the next challenge is the next 2 years. So, you know, the next 2 years I'll earn my money with the RFU.
Because of course it won't be like, right, go on, work harder. Yeah. Or even it won't be just pushing them harder. Yeah. What else can you do to make sure that they come out of?
Well, we need to make it exciting for them. We need to make it exciting. Again, they need to think they're doing something that's just more than playing rugby. It's got to be something that wants them to be uncomfortable. And the other part of that is we do it through selection. You know, as a national team, you can pick who you want, and if players aren't 100% committed, it doesn't matter who they are, whether they're the media darling or they're not, we won't pick them.
So you make them interesting to them and exciting by by great social gatherings where everybody enjoys being together, or by just creating a setup in which they know they're going to be learning, which is...
Well, we try to create a really strong learning environment in the team, and I think, again, if you look back how young people learn now, it's completely different to how people learnt 20 or 30 years ago. So we've really changed the way we learn, and that means that we don't have old-fashioned team meetings where the coach gets up and makes a speech for 10 minutes. It's not like, what's that movie, that Al Pacino one? On any given Sunday. It's not like that anymore. People love it to be like that, but it's not like that anymore.
So you chatted about how long now?
We never have a meeting longer than 15 minutes, and we never have a meeting that has more than 3 points. And so when they walk out of those meetings, they understand those 3 points. There's been interaction between the players themselves and the players and the coaches. So there's a discussion about it, and it's harder. It's harder to do because people, when you create that sort of environment, people who normally wouldn't voice an opinion do. So you get creativity. Whenever you get creativity, you get conflict. And then it's about bringing things back onto the same page, making sure that when we walk out the room, everyone's clear on what we need to do.
So you create this bubble, you put this wall so society doesn't get into it, not fully anyway. And going back to Pochettino, one of the things that he struggles with is that just before training, everybody looks at the watch, at the phone. It's like, what message would they have got just in that 5 minutes between putting the boots and going into training to actually need to be looking at the phone? Do you find that you have to deal with that as well, and how do you get them out of that?
Well, one of the great things Dylan's done, he takes absolutely all credit for this. He started a rule when we're in our team meeting that no one's allowed to look at their phone. And it's just changed the way players communicate, because now they sit down and they can't just go to their Facebook. James Haskell can't put a new photo of him half naked on Instagram. They've got to communicate, and that's really changed the way the team operates. And we had a camp down in Brighton last year, I think it was, and we had a doctor, he's no longer with us, who was a mad Liverpool fan. Liverpool's playing in the Europa League. Who cares who wins the Europa League? But he did. So the rule at dinner is you can't get out your phone. He got out his phone to check the score. So the players made him do 10 push-ups in this quite nice restaurant in Brighton, and they're the worst 10 push-ups you've ever seen. And he actually left the restaurant. But, again, it's just indicative of having a strong leader, setting some simple rules, like simple's always better, about how you had to behave and how important the team is.
So you get to the point where you have to get your team to perform. Just before they do that, you have to prepare. There's a learning curve, all that. In the last hours, what are you like in the last hour just before getting to the pitch?
Well, you're always nervous. If you're not nervous, you shouldn't be doing it. I'm always nervous the speech I'm going to make, whether I'm going to have a positive effect or a negative effect, because once you get on the game day, the players are in control of their preparation. But sometimes as a coach, you can make a difference. You can just pull everything together. You can get a player who's maybe feeling a bit shitty to feel a bit better. Because the thing about professional sport is the ability of the players on their bad days to perform. It's not when they're feeling good. Everyone wants to feel good, but most times in any professional sport where you're playing 30 to 40 games a year, where you're banging into people and you've got to run hard, you're not feeling good. So the coach's ability and the staff's ability is to make those guys realise on those bad days how they work through that. And so if they haven't got their game A, they go to their plan B, or if they're not in B condition, they go to C, and they can find a way on that day. So I get nervous about that, and when I lose that nerves, I'll finish.
You still got that?
Just. No, I got plenty of it, yeah.
Do you watch football?
I love it, yeah.
Great. And what do you see in a game?
Well, I can't, I was saying to you before, I can't work out why football, they're always talking about formation. Because when I watch the game, I don't see the formations. I see them trying to get spacing next to each other and keep some sort of shape. And the teams that run hard forward, run hard back, have good awareness of space are the good teams. And then if you've got a Messi, you've got a great team. And you can see, the coaches, you can see the way the coaches coach the teams who run hard and the teams that don't run hard. It's quite evident.
It's very famous that you met Pep Guardiola, of course. There's little bits that have come out from that conversation, that meeting. Would you take us back? It was in Munich. It was a very cold day.
Yeah, no, it changed the way I coach. I came out of that session embarrassed how I'd been coaching. Because when I was a young coach, I used to coach pretty hard, and I probably got criticised a bit for it. And I went and watched Pep's session. Here's some of the best players in the world. It was -5. It was freezing. They did quite a traditional warm-up, and I thought, maybe I'm not going to learn anything today. And then they played this 7. They had 21 players. They played 3 teams of 7, and they were working about getting into space, their body position of how to get into space. And Pep was out there running the session, speaking in 4 or 5 different languages, telling what's the Dutch guy? Robbins what to do. And it was just really enlightening how hard they worked in that 20 minutes and how he was embedding his philosophy on that team and how the players had bought into it. And I remember them coming off and they had sweat pouring off them. And it was like I'd seen many football sides train, and then watching that session, it was like up here and the rest of them were down here. And it's definitely changed the way I've coached since then.
How?
I work the players a lot harder, much harder.
They must love Pep Guardiola then.
Yeah.
and it is, your sessions tend to be short because you're trying high intensity. So how can you work it even harder than that then?
I think that's the key today. I think, we've borrowed a lot from football. We've taken 2 concepts, the game model, made sure we really announce a game model very strongly, and then we prepare with the methodology, a rugby version of tactical periodisation, which has definitely helped the teams I've coached because we get much more consistent performance and we're able to actually improve teams during the season. So we went to Argentina recently. We had 28 senior players unavailable. We took a team that at the start, we had 5 weeks to prepare the team, or to the last game. In the first week of training, we got something like 14% accelerations of training, which is far too low. By the last week, we got 40%. And it was all by doing it through the game. None of it through doing acceleration work. It was all done by through the game. And, I've read a lot about it. I went down to Aspire. There's a Spanish guy down there, Alberto, I think his name was. Brilliant guy. Absolutely brilliant. Helped me a lot in understanding tactical periodisation.
I met Pep Guardiola last week to talk about you, and at first he's like, we spoke a lot, but I cannot remember exactly what. It went away, and half an hour later came running and said, no, I remember. It was something to do, the thing that he kept in his mind is the fact that you have to pass back in rugby, because that pass back is similar to what Johan Cruyff always said to him, which is like, if you actually open up the game by playing backwards, it's a better way to go forwards because you're able to have a bigger vision of the pitch. You remember that? Yeah,
no, and I was really impressed by the way he had looked at other sports to try to work out ways to create space. And the reality is football, European handball, Aussie rules, rugby union, we're all about trying to create space or find space. And you can never learn enough about that, and that's why I find football and football managers fascinating.
And the other thing that he mentioned is that he's, like yourself, gets very nervous before a game. As a player, used to vomit and all, but that helped him get a mind sharp into the game. But pain as well related to your game in relation to football. How do you all deal with pain? Because you must be hurt all the time.
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things there is that, coaches put limitations on the player because no one knows how hard you can work. It's the old story about Roger Bannister when he ran the first 4-minute mile. All the medical texts at that time said that if you ran a 4-minute mile, your body would disintegrate. This is serious, your body would disintegrate. Then he runs a 4-minute mile, next year 8 people run it. In America, every year now, 20 people run a 4-minute mile. So we don't know how much the players can do, but because we put limitations on them, and therefore the players themselves come up with limitations of what they can do. So if you train for this amount, you're going to feel tired. You're going to start feeling pain. But the fact is, we don't know where that actually is going to go, and that's a fascinating bit. So we went to the States and spoke to this guy who's a lecturer at a university in Houston, just about the fact of little things you can play tricks with the mind to increase their capacity to work harder without them knowing it. And it's quite fascinating. For instance, you do a yo-yo test or whatever test. So you run the test at the normal distance, which might be 25 metres. Next time you do the test over 26 metres. So the players think they're running the same distance. And you find that at least 60% of the players will do more. Why? Because they don't understand that they're breaking their limitations. And that's our job as coaches, is to break our own limitations of what the players can do and then get the players to adjust their limitations.
One of the sad things I feel from the FA in recent years is that they haven't been taking too many lessons from their mistakes, the football FA. So I know Gary Neville told me that in the period that he was there, once he finished, he wasn't called up to be telling the FA what he had learned, even because he was considered a failure and he was pushed aside. You are learning so much, not only about the game, but about other games. You're learning about the English mentality. Have you been called to, from the football world to say, what can we learn from you?
I spent a couple of days with Gareth at the English camp, so that was interesting. But football's far in advance of rugby. We're just little brothers, We're just struggling to keep up, aren't we?
You reckon?
Yeah, definitely.
You talking business, or are you talking how it works with coaches
and just
players?
the sport, the sport itself. But I think, we're starting to do some good things in rugby, and I think maybe there might be something to learn.
Yeah, especially, is there anything that you've learned from the English mentality that you think could be applied in the football at all?
Probably learned some things not to do. We have similar problems because you look at the English football team. They've got big stars. They're all comfortable. They're huge in Premier League. What is their motivation to go through hurt, as you said, to play for their national team? Why should they push themselves to the national team? And we're lucky in rugby at this stage that the national team's still bigger than club rugby. So there's that innate motivation there. The trick is, how do you get those players to want to do more? Spain does it, Germany does it, so there's ways to do it, and that's the fascinating part.
You discovered some things about the mentality of people and players, which perhaps we still don't have the full answer for. Is that where there's still the biggest learning curve in any sport, in rugby? How you can play with the mind of players?
100%. I think. I still think there's gaps in physical preparation. I still think we can prepare players better physically. Our game's changing, and I'm sure football's changing. You just, again, with my limited view, teams are playing a more pressured game, so they're pushing harder. So acceleration becomes a much more important physiological trait. So how can you improve acceleration? That's one thing that's being looked at, I think, very closely in rugby and I'm sure in football. And then with the length of the season, how do you keep churning the players out to give tough performances week in and week out? How do you keep working on them? That's where I think the psychological side comes into it much more.
Football perhaps is moving towards if I go back to Pochettino, the idea of versatility, or Pep Guardiola as well. Teams just change formation during a game, and if you're able to do that, the quicker you get there, the better for you. Is rugby evolving that way as well? How do you picture rugby in 10, 15 years' time?
100%. One of the things that stifles us in rugby, we actually have to put a position on the players' back that coincides with their position. And we shouldn't have that. We should have the ability to have a player in any number and any positions. Like now we have three at the back, and we've got left fullback, centre fullback and right fullback. But we call them left wing, fullback and right wing. It's not right. We played with Japan, we played against Georgia. we played with 9 forwards and 6 backs. Because Georgia got, they eat Japanese for breakfast. They're all born with beards, Georgians. No Japanese has got a beard, which shows you the different level of testosterone. So we played with 9 forwards and we won the game. And no one even knew we did that. I can tell you, no one knew we did it. We played with 9 forwards and 6 backs, and that's the way rugby's going. To be flexible, adaptable, players to play different positions and being able to move.
There's a legend that comes with you that you're hard to deal with. Perhaps at work, you seem relaxed and happy, but do then players respect you, hate you, love you? What's the feeling from them?
Well, I think you're always looking for a relationship where you have respect. It's not a relationship where you like to be liked. It's nice if you like. There's still players I coached way back in the first year that I still see regularly in Australia, but I think it's more out of respect. And there was a great story recently about Brady and Belichick. They've got one of the greatest sporting partnerships ever, but they've never had dinner together. It's a professional relationship built on respect. So respect's the most important thing.
So you don't come out of your house like most of us do, hoping to be loved by everybody. You don't care about that.
Only if my dog loves me, and my wife loves me most days. I'm happy.
And so that's how they feel towards you, but how do you feel towards the players?
Well, you have to hold yourself back from liking players. There's a few players I like. I like Haskell. I like the way he plays. He's been a bit of an outsider in England. He's played 70 caps and never been comfortable, but he's fought his way through. So you've got to hold that, because at the end of the day, you can never. The selection's the most important thing you've got to do, and the selection's got to be about assessing their performance, and you've got to be able to do that with a clear head.
So what was the last time that you found the magic? You were talking about Pep Guardiola and seeing a training session. Apart from that one, the magic of discovering. Do you still feel that? And what was the last thing that...
Yeah, no, it was on the weekend. I was, as I said, listening to this sports psychologist. He was just brilliant. This old guy, 69, hearing aids. He walks in, faded Lacoste shirt, jeans straight out of Arkansas, pair of white sneakers. So you got a picture now. Sat down. He looked like the most uninspiring guy, but then his ability to make sports psychology into a usable form was just absolutely outstanding. And he told the story of how he was involved in Chicago Cubs, and just one of the stories he told, just quickly. So they play 162 games a year. So their first meeting, the coach put down 162 balls, and then he put down another 19 balls at the end to signify the playoff games. He was just talking about the fact that he spoke to the squad and he said, look, you're not all going to be picked for the first game, but there's somewhere along this line that you're going to be an important part of our team. And the only important game we have to win is that last game. And I thought, again, just a nice visual way of putting a season down, and he was just absolutely brilliant. So he's got a book, Heads Up Baseball Part 2 by Ken Rizzo. So if you want to read about it, read about it. So absolutely fascinating.
That's a bit of the magic of the profession, isn't it? To actually find things that then you can apply to. Going back to Pep Guardiola, I said his moment of where the light came into his head is when he was just in his room thinking of tactics and how to beat the team, and all of a sudden he found a way. This is the way. This is where we're gonna go. Have you got a moment like that? Something that brings you all forward? It makes the profession make sense.
I can remember with Japan we played Wales, and we just got beaten 21-18. And I was so angry we got beaten, because Japan hadn't beaten a Tier 1 country. We made a simple mistake at the end of the game. I couldn't sleep that night, and then I just came up with one phrase that encapsulated how we had to play the next game, and we won the game easily, and we never looked back after that. And it just was a phrase that was simple to understand, but just was able to change the way we played. And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't.
Can you share the sentence?
It was just about not letting a side recover. making sure when we attack, not let them recover. So as soon as we got the defence on the back foot, we keep the defence on the back foot.
Let's finish with Japan, because there was a classic, obviously, press conference which everybody knows about, where you decided, I don't know if improvised or not, to have a go at your team after losing it to the French Barbarians. Do you prepare those things? Did that come to you? How did that go?
Well, I think press conference is always dependent on what the attitude of the press is, what you're feeling like, what the result's been like. And sometimes you plan it and sometimes you don't. I definitely didn't plan that, but it was the best thing I did, because it helped change the mindset of Japanese, because they were a team that was happy to try hard and get beaten. Yeah, it was, if you got beaten 50 to 25, everyone would clap and everyone would smile at the end because you'd put in, and it was accepted that you could lose. And I knew that was one of the most important things I had to change, was their mindset, that it wasn't any good to lose. And so when the captain laughed, I thought, shit, here we go. We might as well give this a twirl. And he was a great little bloke. You know, I'm not, having said, you know, I'm still friends with that guy. I go and have coffee with him every time I go to Japan. Lovely guy. And the chairman came up to me afterwards. He said, it's about time someone said that. And it did have an effect on the team, because then it became quite evident that it was never good enough to lose. You know, we were always about winning, and it helped change how the Japanese thought about rugby. And the spectators as well, and the media as well. Yeah, because when you get those sort of mindsets about a losing club or a losing country, it's not just the team and it's not just the players. You find it's the fans, you find it's the media, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you've got to break that.
Did you find with England a mindset that said, we have been defeated, we're willing to learn? Or did you have to change their mindset and say, right, guys, you have to think completely different now? Which one?
What I found was that, say that was the team there, if that's the team on the table, under here was this great desire. RFU the same, great desire. But no one wanted to sort of break it, because there was a tradition of the way you did things, traditions of the way rugby was done in England. And what we've been able to do is break that a little bit and bring things up.
Are they there now?
Yeah, but it can go down quickly. You know, gravity forces you down.
Ed, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks.